All right, welcome back to another CNATS special. Today we're joined by Kenia Calderon. She's a 75 kg lifter from Classic City, UGA's powerlifting team. Phenomenal guest to have on, really easy to talk to, really easy to get an hour of information out of her. She had a great mindset and one of our better podcasts, honestly, but hope you can make it to the end and I hope you enjoy it. Welcome to Podium Talk. Welcome back to another phenomenal episode. Today we're joined by Kenya. Obviously, Tony. Avery couldn't make it this time. He will be back next episode, so don't worry about it. He's still here. Training recaps. Tony, how we doing?
Yeah, man, same old, same old. We're starting the week one after the big week 4 last week. Honestly, going pretty good. I dedicated myself to no caffeine and no music this week, and I thought it was going to be brutal, but honestly, I'm kind of enjoying it. So if you ever want to switch things up, challenge yourself, might learn something about yourself, try that out because I'm kind of enjoying it right now. Eli, you go.
Every day that we wake up the next morning is a W. So that's how training is going. Kenya, how's your training?
Going good. I'm making the most of it. I'm about to start my week 4 before officially I feel like starting prep for CNATS. So we're gonna start Saturday with some big deadlifts.
All right, sounds good. And
Okay.
let's go ahead, introduce yourself as much as you want to say. This is my first time meeting you. You probably talked to Tony 2 or 3 times, so introduce to all of us.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you guys for having me on the podcast. I'm Kenya, like you said. I'm a senior at the University of Georgia, majoring in supply chain management. I've been powerlifting for almost 4 years now, or 3.5. And I'm from Norcross, Georgia.
Beautiful, beautiful. And are you graduating spring or are you graduating later?
I'm graduating in May.
Oh, nice. So second person in a row that's like about to graduate. But yeah. So you said you've been in it 3, 4 years. How did you get that
Yeah.
start? Or when did you start or why did you start?
Yeah, so I started after I met my boyfriend my senior year of high school. I had been wanting to find like some sort of outlet with like exercise. I had done karate for 7 years before that, which was great. Taught me a lot about discipline and pushing through stuff, which kind of helped with powerlifting. But I didn't really get introduced into powerlifting until I met him and kind of like went into the gym a little bit with him towards the end of 2019. But COVID hit, obviously, so then that kind of like put a pause into things. And then I officially kind of delved into my interest in it because I knew I kind of felt like I was a little bit strong. So I kind of wanted to test the waters. So summer I started with my coach Dan. That was my first coach. And then I signed up for my meet November 2020, which was like the Viking Strength Classic, I think.
Mhm.
And from there, haven't looked back.
All right. And you said you were in karate. Did you do any other sports or competitions?
Not really. I kind of like did karate because my mom was like, you need like an extracurricular. We want you to like work out and stuff. So that was like my exercise, my outlet for a little bit.
And how far did you go in there? Like I don't know, like you said 7 years?
Yeah, I started when I was in like middle school.
Mm-hmm.
I think I like quit right before my black belt. So I got to like a brown black belt, which is the one before it. And then um high school kind of like just got really stressful. I was nearing the end of like my junior year, going into my senior year. So I was like, I just need to focus on getting into Georgia. So
Mm-hmm.
so I did.
Do you ever think about going back and finishing out that black belt?
I thought about it, but by then I had already like met my boyfriend and knew about like powerlifting. And there's like so many people at Muscle City Barbell, which is like the first real gym that I've ever been to. So I
Mm-hmm.
kind of, you know, stopped thinking about it and like went into that.
Yeah. And then you said, 4 years, you had your first coach, you went to the Viking Strength Classic. Was there ever like a switch up where you weren't taking it so serious and you switched to actually like focusing hard, really saying, I want to pursue this? Like, how long have you been taking it very seriously?
I think probably when I started with jazz. Um, when I was with my first coach Dan, I love powerlifting and stuff. But I didn't really like see myself with that kind of like champion mentality to where like I want to be the best, like I want to be amongst the best until I decided that I wanted to be coached by Jazz. She was really like up and coming, I would say. Like she already had Gerald as a client by then too. So, and I already met her at Muscle City before and seen how she had grown as a coach, and that was something that I was really interested in. So I decided to, kind of get that in the change of mentality. I kind of changed coaches, which I always loved Dan. He was always my first coach and had a great time working with him. But I think I really started to take it seriously once I was under Team Field.
Mm-hmm. And was the switch up, was having a female coach more applicable to you? Like, did you feel a better connection with a female coach?
Um, I think there's pros to having a female coach in that I think that they're more understanding of like what a female lifter goes through. But I also think like Jazz's mentality is really great. Like even like being handled by her at a meet, it's like I don't have to worry about anything. She's very like numbers, like she has so many spreadsheets. If you ever see her at a meet, she has like so many papers and a clipboard and she has like her plans and stuff. So I loved like how detailed she was. And I think with how invested she was in like my goals and my journey is like something that made me really like proud to be under her as like a client. So I think that was what I really liked about Chaz initially too.
And then I've been training with Bryce a little bit. Tony, you want to say something?
Hmm.
No. You go ahead.
Right. So I've seen a couple of her sheets and kind of how she does things, and I like it. It's a little different, but it's the same like concepts of everything. I like she has like a little app or something that like can show you each thing. And it's like a description of the
Hmm.
lift, and it's very descriptive. It like shows you everything you could need to know. So I think that's cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, so how long have you been coached by her?
I started with her. So like I did the Atlanta Open in 2021, and I think that fall, like maybe August or September after that, I started with Jazz.
I did
Mhm.
that me too.
And I had
Yeah.
already worked with Jazz with like nutrition for my first meet,
Mhm.
and I liked working with her. And then I kind of like stopped nutrition, and then I was like, you know what, let me work with her full time.
So you mentioned
Okay.
nutrition. So what variables do you control? Do you control tracking your macros, your micros? Do you like make sure you get enough sleep? Do you track your
Hmm.
caffeine consumption and your protein intakes or anything? What all do you control?
Yeah. So I actually work with nutritionist Leslie from Big Three Nutrition. She's been great. Another female coach, which again, I guess is just also like the emotional part too that comes with having a female coach. But she and I have both been working on tracking like fiber, sleep, how much water intake, macros, steps, all of that. As far as
Beautiful.
caffeine consumption, we just like, have a ghost a day, cup of coffee.
Yeah,
Think it's all
precisely.
right. Still alive.
Exactly. Just keep down on them. And we keep on this female coach. What advice will you give to Tony? Because he has female clients. What advice would you give to
Uh-huh.
Tony to help him understand what they're going through and like not push them way too hard as he already does?
Um, I would say it's very like individual. I think as the more you get to know your client, the better you'll understand when to like push or when to pull back. And it's also just really big on like communicating with you as a coach. I'll always like text Jazz like, hey, not feeling the best. Um, might have to like dial the weights back today. And then she'll be like, that's fine. Don't worry about it. 'Cause it's also like all about keeping you healthy and you don't want to push it too hard and injure your lifter. Um, so I think that's really good. But there's also times like where the female lifter could probably handle a lot, I think isn't there like a statistic or something how we can like handle like higher volume at heavier
Mhm.
weight or something like that? Like
Yeah.
I feel like that's pretty true based on like my own experience. So I think it honestly really just depends on like the lifter, but as long as like both of you are really good at communicating that and like tailoring to that person, then you'll be good.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah. I hope that wasn't too broad.
No,
No,
that's
no,
perfect.
no. I mean, communication, making sure that it's into, everything's personalized, totally. But you mentioned, you said the word injury. So I was gonna ask you, have you ever had an injury yourself that you ever had to deal with? Or
Yeah, yeah, I've had to deal with a couple of injuries. I think for maybe the last 2 years or so, 2.5 years, I've dealt with like back injuries, pretty badly. Like to where this no meet I did in November, like that was my first time PRing my deadlift in 2 years.
ooh,
I had like several back strains. Found out last February I actually herniated a disc in my back.
ooh,
Um, I've had like honestly, if you think about it, I've probably had to deal with it and overcome it. Shoulder, knee, like back, hip, hamstring.
oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, what's kind of kept you, headstrong through all of that? I mean, you've been doing it for so long. A lot of people, I feel like whenever they deal with these little aches and pains or even actual serious injuries like a herniated disc, they
Mhm.
immediately, run the opposite direction and maybe just kind of jump ship. What's kind of kept you straight going?
Honestly, it's the aspirations that I came into it. Like when I started working with Jazz, like I said I wanted to be a champion one day and I like believe I have the potential to be it. So why would I let an injury stop me from that? I think it's all about like overcoming it. I know you guys like to ask like advice for lifters, and I feel like I know it's kind of early for that, but like my advice for that would be, and when it gets hard, when it gets tough, that's not the time for you to run back, like how you said the opposite direction. It's not the time for you to quit. It's kind of the time for you to really focus on why you started and what your goals were. And champions, IPF champions, like Austin Perkins went and had hernia surgery. Like he overcame that and like look how strong he is now. If they can do it, why can't you?
Hey, man, that just gave me some chills. That was a great answer. Yeah, shoot, okay. Came in here inspirational. But
Mm.
yeah, that's dope. I did kind of want to talk about a little bit about your recent meet. In November, you did do November. Me and Eli were both there commentating. Uh yeah, talk about that a little bit. Are there any thoughts about your performance or about the meet itself or
Mhm.
anything like that?
Um, it was definitely like not my favorite performance, but I mean I've had like what 6 or 7 meets under my belt, so it's like it is what it is. After every meet, I kind of like pick up like pros, cons, what I learned from, and then we move on to the next meet and like dive into training. But before that meet, I had hurt my shoulder 2 weeks out. Couldn't really like even bench a red the week of, and so I like just took what was there for bench, and I still did pretty well. For squats, I think I kind of like didn't recomp as well maybe. Uh, but I still like I hit 340 during my peak week and hit like 336, I think, on the platform. So I think that was pretty good, especially considering that was my first time water cutting as well. And then for deadlifts, I mean, deadlifts went great. I hit a big PR. I think it was like a 20-pound PR maybe. After like again, like I said, 2 years of having to deal with a back injury that affected like my deadlift the most. So that was pretty
Mhm.
cool.
That's
And then I
amazing.
won, so that was good.
Yeah. Okay, that's sick. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that back thing 'cause I actually had no idea. 2 years without a deadlift PR, man, that is rough. Like,
Hey
whoo,
man, that's what I'm telling you. A lot of people like get really upset when they haven't PR'd after like a block. And I'm like, I haven't PR'd after 2 years.
don't point
So
at me, dude. Don't point at me, Eli. But no, yeah, for sure. Yeah. More people need to be like you, honestly, because yeah,
it's rough though. I will say, like, I mean, I don't want to make it seem like I wasn't upset about it, but it's like it really is like you remembering what your long-term goal is.
Mhm. Yeah, it's all about patience in here. And I know Tony preaches that to his people, and I preach it to mine. It's all about patience. You got to know that we're not in it for the next meet, but the meet 6 years down the road where you really take it over and take control. And I mean, if your plan is to be at Nats, winning Nats, or going to Worlds, then what does, having to go out and have a bad meet just to qualify for mean? Or like, what does missing deadlifts actually mean? Just get back to it, keep going. But we kind of mentioned a lot about your mentality already and about, handling injuries. But what is your like day-to-day mentality going in the gym, getting through your
Mhm.
training sessions? Like, how do you stay focused, stay driven,
Mhm.
and just kind of handle it day to day?
Yeah, I mean, I won't lie, some days are hard where you don't feel like motivated to go lift. Like, um, yesterday I did 320 for a double on squats and I did not want to go into the gym. I was feeling very unmotivated, but something that my coach told me that really sticks with me is like motivation is fleeting and it's all about like the discipline of you remembering like when your mood to do something like goes away, like it's all about why you want to do that. So I think that is what has really helped me with like going into training sessions, and remembering like why I want to do this in the first place. So I think that really helps. And also like the competitive aspect, like if I train hard, like I know my competition is probably training just as hard. So like why shouldn't I? Like why should I slack off? So that helps too.
Yeah, yeah, I was actually curious, because I didn't really like get a great look at the roster with the 75 kilo women. Do you
Hmm.
have any like in-state kind of, ops? Like, do you have anybody that, you kind of were like, oh, their training looks kind of good right now? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Um, it's funny you asked that, but I'm also like good friends with her. Her name's Hannah Spielman. She's the other like I don't know any other like 75 women very well, but I know me and her lift every Saturday morning, usually at DNA. And she's really nice, but she's also another 75er that I will be going against. She's really strong, so it'll be good. It'll be cool to see like the numbers we put up.
Hmm.
Okay.
For sure.
Okay.
Are there any out of state ops that you got that you're eyeballing that you might not be friends with, but you're looking at and kind of getting hyped about?
Honestly, honestly, anybody who's like in the top 10. I think I'm like in like 20s somewhere. Um, but like honestly, anybody who's like above me like makes me want to like work even harder. Kind of come in under like being underestimated and be like, nope.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well,
For sure.
I mean, if you're going in and squatting 320 for two on a bad day, I mean, you're definitely going to put up a pretty good number. Yeah, that's really good. I mean, I know, I'm not going to name drop, but I know some girls that are like, around that weight class that aren't doubling that. So you'll probably be all right at CNATS for sure. But while we're on the topic of CNATS, um, let's talk about it. So, what are some things that you're probably like? What are you looking forward to? What are some maybe numbers you have in mind for
Mhm.
CNATS?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to just like going to CNATS. Honestly, I think being able to compete on a national stage is like a great accomplishment in itself. Um, because this is also my first one. I didn't go to the one last year because I decided to do Atlanta Opens primetime session, and I found out that CNAS this year was going to be in Atlanta. So I was like, might as well just push it back one more year. So I'm looking forward to that, and just getting to like really compete with the team and everybody from UGA also. And as far as like numbers, I like really, really want that 400 deadlift. After like I did 386 on my November meet, Jazz said that we definitely had 400, and I was like, ah, kind of hurt because I really wanted it. But we'll definitely have it for CNATs. I feel like as far as bench, I still am like kind of rehabbing the shoulder. We've been keeping bench a little bit more conservative, so if we can get anywhere close to the numbers I had before the November meet, that'd be great. And for squats, I honestly like don't know anything from like 353 to 375 squat maybe, but kind of just there to have like a good day. I feel like it'll be my first time competing nationally, but I also know that I'm going to be doing Raw Nationals in September, so also looking forward to that more too.
Okay,
For sure. For
okay,
sure.
yeah, Yeah, that's smart going into your first meet, not, stressing too hard about numbers, but still having, especially the final deadlift, because, if you have, if you're 8 for 8, I always say it, like if you're 8 for 8 and you feel like you have nothing to lose, like, yeah, load up 407, 402, whichever one you want. But
Hmm.
yeah, no, I'm looking forward. Eli, you were gonna say something?
Yeah, for sure. So you have your numbers in mind. Do you have like a range of placement that you're trying to shoot for, strive for, pull for the win to get in this range?
Yeah, um, I know I'm like being top 20. I also kind of want to keep it realistic. If I could be like top 10, that'd be great. If I could be top 5, that'd be awesome. Anything can happen meet day. I always tell that to people. I told that to my brother when he first competed too. So who knows? But can always shoot for the stars.
Hmm. And then you kind of mentioned it while we were talking there, but what does collegiate nationals mean to you, in comparison to going to raw nats or later, your big goals, like is this just a step in the right direction of getting, your first meet in the book or
Mm.
your first national meet in the books? Or is it like some emotional connection with the collegiate level because, you're leaving college and you're getting out of the stage? What does it mean to you?
Yeah, I think both, to be honest. Definitely it'll be my first collegiate nationals, and then I'm graduating in May, so it'll be like kind of bittersweet. That was like the downside of me not doing it last year is like I only get to do collegiate nationals when I'm in college, obviously. So it'll be cool again, like I said, to compete with other UGA powerlifters, but sad because it'll be my last one.
Mhm.
Um, I think it's also just like you said, a step in the right direction. It's my first national meet, and I have the privilege and honor to compete in another one later this year. So I think it's just steps working towards what my long-term goal is, and I'll do whatever it takes to get there. So I feel like those are two steps in the right direction.
For sure, for sure. And then it being a national meet, what are some expectations you have or like things you're looking forward to in the quality of a national meet or the production? Are you the live stream being slightly better or like the actually having a good warm-up room compared to some of our local meets? And like what kind of step ups in quality are you looking
Hmm.
forward to seeing?
Yeah, I'll definitely say like it being kind of a step up of a from a local level meet, because I think they do it in like they're gonna do it in a convention center. So I think that'll be really cool. I know like my first meet was kind of like an expo at the convention center in Savannah, but this will be like way different. I think also like it's just such a big environment where there's like all of the collegiate lifters nationally are kind of congregating there. And so I know like based on the meet in November and based on like the meet that we had at DNA, the Southeastern Collegiate meet, I think collegiate lifters bring a lot of energy, and that'll be really exciting to see, especially it being like my first national meet. But also just kind of like what you said with the warm-up room, just kind of like having more consistent equipment from like what you expect on a platform. I think that is always like advantageous versus kind of like some local meets have CrossFit gym and like bumper plates, not always what you see like when you go into the platform. So I think just like the quality of the meets going up from a local level perspective will be really cool.
Yep, it'll be a lot more, yeah, professional, like real, like everybody there is like taking it serious, like no kind of, crazy little, because every local meet has a crazy little like story, somebody dumps the bar or like somebody like, I don't know, misses their like turn to go because they didn't have a handler. So
Hmm.
CNATS, yeah, it's great that, you get to do CNATS and experience your first national meet in your hometown.
Hmm.
But beyond that, I kind of just want to talk a little bit more about your refereeing experience. Can you talk about just how you even kind of got into that?
Yeah, so somebody who I really like looked up to, especially when I started powerlifting, was Elizabeth Turner, and she does a lot of the local meets. Like she and Jazz kind of started the Atlanta Open, and she is a national referee. She works with UGA powerlifting a lot, and she does like so much for the sport of powerlifting, especially for the state of Georgia, and that kind of like inspired me to want to do it, especially with like how many meets need referees and how hard it is to get referees and just spotters in general. And I felt like I love the sport so much. My brother's getting into the sport. Why not like me start to like, why don't I start to pay back like what it's done for me and volunteer and be a referee?
Yeah, respect. Yeah, no, a lot of people don't really ever think about, yeah, giving back
Mm-hmm.
and helping out in, ways such as that, especially there are shortages and whatnot. Um, I was gonna ask, like, is there anything that you've learned from being a ref that maybe is translated to, your training or even your
Hmm.
meet day experiences?
Hmm. I think definitely the knowledge. I think it's always a good thing to like to read the handbook that the USAPL has, because when you like miss a lift and you see like the red and the blue or the red and the yellow, like sometimes you just see the red and like you just assume the worst or whatever. But it's good to also know like what the ref saw specifically to fix that when you're in a meet. And I think as far as like my training goes, I think it really helps me be more strict on myself to make sure that I'm training to standard so that when I compete, I don't have those issues.
Yeah, for sure. No, definitely. I'd imagine, having experience watching people over and over and over again, like you kind of nail, like every time you look at yourself in a video, you're like, is that depth? Did I kind of rush that press command?
Hmm.
But alongside with that, are there kind of any tricks that you have to kind of like tell if, because I feel like a lot of people, um, there's like a lot of gray area with things such as depth and with a press command and with even things like your butt being on the bench or your heels on the floor. Like, are there any
Hmm.
kind of like anything, just about any stand like that you look for to try to like kind of understand this is high, this is low, whatever?
Hmm. I will say, as far as like depth goes, if you squat, like you don't have to squat like ass to grass, right, to hit depth. But if you're like actually making your depth like undeniable, then that makes it so much easier like for refs to be able to tell that there's depth, honestly. When it's like borderline or like you're slightly under, it's a little bit harder. But again, like if a ref can't tell if you hit depth or not, or like say they weren't paying attention, they have to give the benefit of the doubt to the lifter and give them a white light. So that's like also something to remember. But I would also say like again, it helps if you like in training, like you're squatting to depth and making sure it's like, all right, for sure I hit depth. So that on meet day, it's like makes it easier for a ref to tell. As far as like when I tell like for squats, sometimes people get really like tense before they like descend on the squat, and that's how you can kind of tell like they might cut depth a little bit short because they're nervous, or they like unracked it weird. Bench is probably pretty easy, honestly, like because I can position myself so I can see like if their butt is on the bench, their feet are flat. I've actually like recently experienced most people playing around with their grip on the bar, and like you have to keep your thumbs around the bar, and like I didn't realize how many people don't do that at a meet because they won't get the start command. So I would also say like if you read the rule book, you'll know what to do. And then deadlift is always easy. Deadlift is like you either like have a soft lockout, you hitch, you got it, and that's about it. So that's pretty easy to tell for me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I was like, last thing about the whole refing thing. Are there like any sort of challenges that maybe people don't really know about? Some things that like, you just happen consistently that you're kind of like, ah man, this is hard to deal with.
Hmm. Um, it kind of depends. It's like a big part of it is how organized the meet is. I love coaching, or not coaching, reffing Elizabeth's meet, because she like does such a great job with organizing them, and those are pretty like smoothly run. So I've never really had that big of an issue, from that perspective, but I know that that can be something where that's the case. I feel like the hard part is when you have to ref somebody you know, and if they
Okay.
like miss it or something. Whenever I have to ref like somebody from Team Fueled, I'm always like praying like before they go out there that they don't do anything to miss the lift. And most times like, Jazz is always making sure she's a ref as well. So she is always making sure that we're like training to standard. So most times like if I have to give a red for somebody on the team, it's because they didn't like get it because of strength or something. But yeah, I think that's always a hard part because you always like don't want to give a red to somebody, but also at the same time as a ref, you have to make sure that the standard is there and the standard is being set.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you need that integrity. That's a great point. Refing your friends, especially, yeah, for sure. Uh Eli.
Yeah. I mean, that's a beautiful point because you look at some of these untested federations and where you have the backyard meets where they're friends of their refs and they get gifted lifts. And then there's a lot of problems with the world records on the untested side because of gifted lifts. And
Hmm.
then, it's a hard thing to give, like, especially if you're ref in a meet and like one of your best friends is out there and then they're about to, maybe bomb out or maybe like miss their second squat. It's hard to give him a red light, but then I always just think of the example of like Pana and the French. His wife actually bombed him out of a meet on depth. She was the center referee at a silent worker meet that he was competing at. And it's kind of, you got to think like it's the best thing for them to keep their standard up tight because you won't always be in the chair. They got to go to nationals, to collegiate nationals. The IPF side's a lot stricter, but we like to encourage volunteering and putting back into the sport. So what is the process of becoming a ref to encourage people to go take that step?
Hmm. So definitely like you reach out to your state chair, or send them an email and they'll be more than happy to get you like informed on what the process looks like. There's like an online exam and you have to get a certain score on. And then you take like a practical, which is where you sit down with a national ref at a meet and you have to like basically after somebody goes, you have to say, well, it was a red and a yellow, or it was a good lift. And I think they can't like disagree with you more than 10 times. Like you have to get 90
Mhm.
right. Um, and that's like that part of the exam. So once you pass that, then you just have to do like a bunch of training and stuff as far as like background check goes, like kind of your standard liability stuff. But it's really fairly straightforward to be honest, as long as you do it right to where there's a lot of meets ahead of in the calendar so that they can get like a national ref to sit down with you. But for me, it didn't take very long. I did so I competed let's see. So last year I competed at the Atlanta Open in the primetime session on
Mhm.
Saturday, and I took my ref test that next day at high school state championships.
Mm. And then
So, yeah,
in reffing, do you prefer the side chair or do you prefer to be the head ref?
I've
Like
never head refed, um, and I'm like too nervous to do that. But again, like if I have to, I will. So I usually
Mhm.
am the side ref. Um, but yeah, I've never head refed. It is very like I've heard it's good for some people because it helps them stay focused. Because after like three flight meets, they like go off for a very long time and it can be very like, you're seeing the same thing over and over for a ref, so it helps them stay focused. Um, but I've never had ref. I would love to one day, but I'm too nervous to right now.
And those nerves, are those for like commands or just having to, deal with both side refs at the same time and just having a lot more responsibility?
I think it's the responsibility part because you have to get the signal from both side refs, but you also have to be making sure like looking at the cues for the lifter like in front of you. And you also have to make sure you're giving them like a good start command, or like for bench, you have to give them a good press command. So you really
Mhm.
have to like, I guess that's something other lifters can also pay attention to if the bar is sinking or if the bar is bouncing on your chest. Because it always sucks when you have to give them a long press command. But also like if the bar is bouncing or it's not like motionless and like you're not gonna get the press command. So there's just like it's a bunch of responsibility on the head ref. Something goes wrong in the system, like that's something the head ref has to work with the meet director to handle, I think. And then also just like making sure the bar is loaded, which as a side ref, like I also always try to keep a look on the little board that shows the spotters to make sure that it's loaded properly. But it's a big responsibility, I feel like, to be a head ref.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it seems tough for sure, but I don't know. I think just trying to give consistent commands for 8 hours straight would just be mind numbing. Just sit there, press, squat. Like I would just get so bored with it. I'm gonna stay in the commentary booth and keep yelling on streams, breaking chairs and such. But yeah, back to CNATs a little bit. What are your dreams for CNATs? Like you said your goals, but like, or what do you want to see? Like even outside of your own performance, like what do you want to get out of CNATs outside of numbers?
I mean, outside of numbers, I just want to like be even hungrier. Like after every meet, like after this November meet, I'm hungry to do better for this next meet. and I want it to like set me up to where I'm like full steam ahead for Raw Nationals.
Hmm.
Especially with it being my first national meet, I kind of get like a taste for national competitors and national level competitors. So it'll be really great to see that environment and getting to be in the warm-up room with like the person who's predicted first, for example. So it'll be really good. I feel like
Hmm.
mentally for me.
And then obviously post CNATS, we're looking raw nats. After that, where are you looking for the future? Like, are you looking stay USAPL, go PA? What are you seeking to do post nats?
After Raw Nationals, the plan is to go to PLA. That's kind of like the route my coach is looking towards, so that is the plan.
Hmm.
We'll see. Maybe we'll do the state meet and be like a state champion. Who knows?
And is that going to be like a Jazzy fully, her team's going to fully go, or you think just most people are going to transition? Obviously,
I
you
think
can't speak for
most,
everyone.
yeah, I can't speak for everyone, but like I think most of the team might because of the Article 14 thing.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I believe most people are. But again, everybody has like their own preferences, so it's up to like for them to decide.
Hmm. And what, other than Jazzy, which is probably the main reason, like Article 14, what is
Mhm,
drawing you towards the PA side versus USAPL?
mhm. So I think I would say two things. The first thing is the production value. I've like I gotten to know the state chair for PA, Drew Cargill, and he has like really big aspirations for PA, especially in the state of Georgia. And it's very exciting to hear, honestly. Um,
Hmm.
Especially he's big on like not wanting to do local meets at a gym, for example, or at a high school gym. And I think that would be really cool to see kind of the quality of the local level meet go up and how it like his excitement, like his investment into making that happen is something that I'm looking forward to once I switched to PA. The other thing like that pushes me is the competition. Like you see all of these high level lifters from USAPL, like Raw Nationals going to PA because that's where all the competitors are going. I'm like, why would, I want to compete like where they're competing because that's where I'm going to be able to go head to head with them. So I think that's
Hmm.
also something that's very exciting and another reason why I'm probably going to go.
Then you did mention, the whole gyms thing. What is something you would like to see PA, USAPL, just in general in our local? What would you like to see change in like the local meets?
I think a more consistent standard of what a local meet looks like. So whether that's being like the equipment that's in the warm-up room, where they're being held, um, just like what they look like for the local level lifter, I think it varies a lot. Um, yeah, I kind of mentioned Elizabeth, and she does really great meets. And I know that's not always the case for everybody. And they look different state by state because they're, some bigger at Georgia and maybe smaller somewhere in another state, so they don't have access to as much stuff. But I think maybe the consistency would be really cool to see.
For sure, for sure. And is there any like sort of innovation that you see in the sport that you would, or something, I don't know, that you've kind of thought of that would change something in the sport, competition wise, or like cool events, or even in the community? Is there anything you've thought or would like to see change for the better?
I'm not too sure to be honest. I feel like just like the production value that I could bring, like, um, I think I remember like on Koi's episode, he talked about mid-level meets also like regionals. So I think kind of
Hmm.
more of an implementation of that would be really cool to see, as a step before like nationals. Um, I think maybe just more meets in general, like cash meets, something that brings really excitement. I think meets that also give back to not only like the sport of powerlifting, but to the community. So, because I see other federation do meets where it's like, like deadlift for cancer or things like that. And I think it would be cool to do something with that because there's so many
Hmm.
people and there's like the sport has grown so much from when I've started. It'd be cool to also just do something with the platform that we have.
For sure. And then, like you've said, you've kind of admired Elizabeth Turner coming
Mhm.
up in the sport. Do you have any aspirations to, become a meet director, co-meet director, be involved in that side of things?
I think it's not something that I have planned for currently or I foresee myself doing. It would be cool maybe in the future to try it out. And if I did, I definitely like want to co-meet direct with either Jazz or Elizabeth, because I know they've worked together in a couple meets and I've competed at those meets. So I think it would be something cool to try. And I think co-meet directing gives you that opportunity, especially since I've already like been a spotter and loader and been a referee. So I think meet directing is always something that's interesting, but right now I don't really foresee myself doing that.
Mhm. And what has been something in the sport that you like, just coming through the sport, as long as you've been in there 4 years, competing in, like 5 or 6 meets, what has been something that you've like every time enjoyed, or like something that's always, this is why I love the sport, or
Mhm.
something that really clicks with you?
I honestly just like progressing from each meet. I know with injuries, that can be the hard case, or that can be like very hard to happen. But I love just like it's either you win somewhere mentally, or you win somewhere physically, where like you hit a PR, or just like you come back from a herniated disc, for example, and then put up like a good PR total or something. I think it's also really cool getting to see like people's families there and like the environment. I know for like girls, there's not as many people because it's really early in the morning, but it's also just really cool like seeing other people who like show up for their family, cheer for you, for example. And it's just like a really great environment. Especially like when you're going in for deadlifts and it's like the last lift of the day and it seems like everybody's like cheering on even more.
Hmm. And has there been anything in the community that you've not liked, or kind of would like to get rid of, or these people are too sensitive, these people are too dramatic, they're creating something, or like, I don't know, the standard of some lifters are kind of not setting a good example for the younger lifters? Is there anything like that?
Hmm. Um, I think something that I see a lot, I feel like, is like the equipment thing. So everybody will like get the newest belt, the newest singlet, or the newest sleeves because they like hope that it'll get them like more kilos than their total. And I don't think that's always the case. I think that's something that shouldn't be like in the front of your mind. I say that, but I also got an SPD belt like over winter break, but also because I'm switching to PA potentially, so that's also why I got it. But I think people should focus on training before like investing a lot of money into equipment because equipment is expensive. And I think if
Mhm.
you can like use people around you to get maybe like their old equipment to use or just build on your training before buying like a $275 belt, I think that would be good.
For sure. And I see that a lot. I have a couple of younger clients, and this one kid, he's 16, and he wants a different singlet every time he competes. He wanted an SBD belt, a new pair of shoes to go into his second meet. He has like 6 pairs of wrist wraps. He has his own, he's USPA, so he has his own deadlift bar. He has his own power bar. And he just keeps spending all his money into this thing that he's just really new in. And it's tough to get them out of that little, because they look on Instagram, you see all the better lifters have the cool gear. So it's hard to get them out of that little
Yeah.
cycle of doing all that. But before we get
It's
too
it's
far,
cool
yeah,
because it's like, oh,
you go.
I was just gonna say it's like it's cool though because they get really excited. So you don't want to like take away the excitement from it, but also it's like you have 3 singlets. I think you're good on singlets.
Exactly, exactly. Does your brother ever come to you and like, oh, I want this, this, and this, and it's gonna make me better?
Oh yeah, he does. So this is me calling my brother out.
Yeah,
I mean, it's pretty much sport wide. Like, not even, I wouldn't even say younger people, like, especially the singlet thing, like get like the nation singlet. That was crazy for a hot minute, of like singlet dealers selling singlets for like $300+. And I'm like, it's not that deep, like, it's just clothes. It was crazy. I didn't get it. But before we get too far away from it, this is interests me. What are some like training habits you have? Like Sequoia said he likes to kind of meditate in the shower a little bit before his session and take a nap. I wear specific clothes on specific days to like help me focus and kind of get in the routine. Are there any specific training habits that you create either per day or per session?
Yeah. I feel like something that I've definitely started doing is like praying before a session. Um, Praying before like for strength, like to be healthy. Anything can happen in a training session. like you can be injured and like 2 weeks out like I was, and it kind of like derail your plans a little bit. So I feel like that kind of has helped me go into my training sessions kind of at peace. Before I feel like I relied a lot on getting angry and kind of like using the rage, I guess, as a way of kind of motivating me to like push the weight faster. But I feel like that me doing that has helped a lot. Also, if like I don't know if you haven't seen me like at a gym, or at least in Ramsey, I've been told that I'm like sometimes kind of scary to go up to because of how like focused or dialed in I am. I don't like to like chit chat a lot in between my sets, especially if I'm working towards like a week 3 or week 4 top set. So I like to just like be really dialed in. Like a lucky thing for me is to have like a sour green apple ghost when I hit those bigger numbers, but that's usually my habit, honestly, is kind of to like keep to myself, be very locked in, give a little like
Mhm.
quick prayer in the parking lot and then go in and do and execute like a champion would. That's what Jazz says.
Like a champion would. Yeah, I agree to that for sure. Like kind of isolating yourself, getting away from the distractions. In Ramsey, it is so tough. And that's kind of why I didn't want to join Classic City because I knew then all the Classic City people would be in the gym talking to me. I just
Hmm.
couldn't avoid it. And I can't go to Ramsey anymore because my session goes an hour longer than it would.
Hmm.
So that's the best part of now. I switched to Classic City bodybuilding. Empty, dead. Still have some people talk to you. Like if Easton is in there, he will not stop talking to me. But I like to train in silence. I have gotten the whole you look kind of, or I've gotten more not you look scary to approach is like you look like a douchebag and you look like you just have your little corner over there in the gym. I get that a lot, but I just be doing my own thing. And then we kind of spoke before we started recording, but what are some of your inspirations in the sport? We mentioned the local ones, but in a broader sense, looking towards females and males higher up in the
Hmm.
sport, who do you look to?
Yeah, I think consistently has been like Sean Noriega has been somebody that I've looked up to and like his training mentality. I know before we had talked about like how he's kind of changed as a person over time, and I think that's been really cool to see. So he also like I would say inspires me like spiritually as well because I know he's also been really big into his faith recently. Steffi Cohen for sure. I know even though she doesn't like powerlift as much anymore, like something I do before I compete is I always watch like old meet videos that she did. It's really just cool to see like the mentality of somebody as strong as she is, and
Mhm.
like what she talked about before getting ready to go on the platform. And somebody else would probably be like Daniela Mello, because I always love watching her 2019 IPF Worlds against Amanda Lawrence and how she lost on body weight. That's always something that gets me really excited. And again, that's like another video I like to watch before I compete.
Mhm.
Three white light, yeah, the three white light videos, man. I
Those are my
literally,
favorite.
yeah, that's like a dream, bro. I don't care what happens at a meet, but if like that, like if they can make a cool edit, that's like a big reason I want to go PLA. Because if like I go to a big meet and then they're there, I want them to like record my battle and like put it on YouTube. That shit looks dope. Like it brings so much excitement to the sport. But yeah, that video you're talking about, that was like literally the first three white light like battle video.
Oh, was
Uh
it?
Mhm.
yeah, it was like the very first one. I think they did that, and then like they did the battle of the 93s, and that really took off. But I think, bro, that video got like 4 million views or something like crazy. So
Yeah, it's an amazing video. Especially like if you know like the context to the video. I don't know, I really like it. It's when I first watched it because I was starting powerlifting, I was like before every training session and every meet I'm gonna have a green apple. So I think it's funny because I have sour green apple ghost before I compete. So that's like I always like to say maybe that's like my homage to that video.
mm.
Yeah. And then we asked this to everybody, but I think you're going to be the first person to actually give me an answer I like. How deep do you follow the sport? Like you seem really knowledgeable of people. Everyone we've talked to is like, oh, I kind of look at the people in my weight class sometimes, but how deep do you like? Do you watch Worlds? Do you watch? Obviously, everyone
Hmm.
watched Sheffield, but
Hmm.
the bigger locals and how deep do you really go?
I really like to see the 75 kilo women because those are the people who are like setting the standard for like me, especially if I get the privilege to go to IPF Worlds one day, it's cool to see them prepping for their meets. So I always like to follow them and see like what they're putting up because it just like kind of motivates me to push my numbers even more, especially like just working to the gym, making sure I'm controlling my variables. Like Jessica Bittner, like she has type 1 diabetes and she's insanely strong. Um, and I don't know, I just like I love following it. Sometimes I think I may have followed it a little bit too much, but it's always just very exciting. I think it's very interesting. Everyone's like life, people who are like teachers, engineers who have like 9 to 5s and how they're able to have like powerlifting be a big part of their life and they can go out and put up these big numbers. So I like it. I think it's interesting. Um, I won't lie about it. Like I won't shy away from me admitting that maybe sometimes I follow them a little bit too much, but I think it's exciting. I think it's motivating.
Yeah,
Hell yeah,
I
no, for
definitely don't
sure.
think too much exists. I think following the sport in general is going to be good for everyone. But
Mm,
in that still, when like let's say Nats comes around, you focus on the 75s the most because obviously that's the most applicable to you. You'll be there, but
mhm,
let's say if you were just watching at home, do you keep up with,
mhm.
the lighter weight all the way to the heavyweight? Do you try to watch every primetime session for all the females?
I do. My coach Jazz, like she competed at I think this last Raw Nationals primetime session.
Mhm.
So it's really cool. Also, one to like see my coach up there, but also just to see like the strength of all the lifters, and the women who go like compete in that session. And I keep up with some of the guys, but obviously like the women are like kind of more applicable to me, so I'm gonna pay more attention to them. But it's like crazy to see how strong they've gotten. Like the 67s. Like Lilia, you guys had her on the podcast. Like she's a really good friend of mine. She is so strong. And it's like crazy to see how strong the 67s, the 52s, my friend Jalen, she's so strong. Like it's just amazing to see across all of the weight classes. But yeah, I like to like just watch and keep up because like it's cool to see maybe like a lower weight class outlift one person who's in a higher weight
Mhm.
class and just like, whoa. But yeah, it's definitely not always just the 75s, but I used to try to like keep a closer watch on the 75s.
For sure, for sure. And I feel like in all stages of people, like not even just females right now, like me and Tony in the past few years, the level of lifters in the female classes have been insane recently. Like this last year's nationals, when we did a preview show, we kind of did all that research. It really like resonated a lot more how much they've grown and how much they're like, it's actually about to be like Sheffield. The female session was way more interesting than the male session almost the whole way through. Like the battles were so tight. There's actually storylines, people are coming back and fighting. There's longevity, there's motivation, and all that's just really good. And I think the female side of the sport's really blowing up on the highest end. And now it's just time for the local end to keep backing it up and, pulling lifters into the sport. But let's talk about inspirations outside of the sport. So we mentioned the lifters in the sport. You said you did karate. I don't know if you have karate inspirations, but do you have any like athletes or motivational people outside of your life or outside of your life in powerlifting that kind of give you a different mentality?
I would say I wouldn't say like athletes, or any like sports teams specifically because I don't follow those as closely. But I think honestly my biggest inspiration would be my dad. Especially with my parents like immigrating to the United States and giving my brother like such a great life. Like we're so privileged to have what we have, and fortunate. And I think like the example that he sets of like you'll reap what like the hard work that you put in. So I think he's been really good about showing me that and like setting an example for both my brother and I, about how hard like or how long hard work can really take you, especially with like everything my dad has gone through. He also I think has like a couple herniated discs, and he's like working more than some of these guys out here, and I'm just like, you know what? Like he's really inspiring to me. And also just like his mentality, like always working, always finding an opportunity, sees the opportunity when it's there. So I think he's like probably one of my biggest inspirations. Also my mom, but want to shout out my dad for that.
For sure. Shout out Pops. And then let's talk about inspirational kind of media, movies, music,
hmm
quotes, like you can even go into philosophy. what do you use? Not use, but like you say you're having a hard time going in the gym. It's kind of getting lackadaisical. You kind of just burn out a little bit. What could you use to light a fire under you, whether it's watching a movie or getting on a different set list in your Spotify?
It's kind of, I feel like this is such like an embarrassing answer, but you know those motivational like podcasts, and it's just like a compilation of like
Mhm.
a bunch of speakers like saying just motivational stuff, you know, like
Yeah.
that you'll outwork the competition, like you came here to win, like you won't give up kind of thing. Um, and so I listen to those honestly, and I kind of like will sit in my car, especially like before a big lift, if I'm like feeling kind of out of it or like not locked in. Um, I'll listen to those, and I'll like those will really put me in kind of the mentality that I need to be in, because those are like people who are like at a high level,
Mhm.
and like have such a like, great mentality that like it's kind of like puts me in check a little bit. So I know it's like maybe a little bit cringe, but those actually really help for me.
I mean, it for sure
Yeah.
is not cringe. I've definitely been on YouTube and looked up just like an hour straight of David Goggins, Eric Thomas, and
Yeah,
Jocko, and like just hearing people scream in your ear during a session. I mean, it'll get it going, you know.
yeah.
For
No, that stuff
sure.
really hits.
They
Oh,
do.
my bad, Eli.
You're good. I mean, even like in high school, that's exactly what they would put on pregame or like
Mm.
it hits the nostalgia and everything. But you've mentioned a lot about kind of your goals in the sport, specifically and generally, and obviously your mindset is the champion's mindset. You obviously want to be great, you want to be the best you can. Specifically, what are your dreams in the sport? Whether that's what stage you intend to compete on or how far you'll go or lifts.
I mean, if I'm like healthy, if I'm given the opportunity, I like want to be in IPF Worlds. Like I want to be like they were in Malta, I think. That's where I want to be too. Even if it's like, even if it's not today or tomorrow or the next day, the day after that, like one day I'll be a champion.
Did you just
Yeah.
quote the UFC? Um,
Possibly, possibly.
Brandon Moreno. Very nice, very nice, very nice. And then let's see, what has powerlifting done for you? Like, you've been in it 5 years, 4 years, you met a lot of friends throughout it all. You kind of went throughout college being a powerlifter. How has it impacted
Mhm.
your life?
Honestly, I feel like powerlifting has shown me that I'm capable of way more than I initially thought. Um, Especially going into like my first meet, for example, and like putting up numbers that I was like never thought I could before, especially when I like kind of first wanted to work out. All I really did was like cardio. And like even karate, I never really took that as serious as I do powerlifting today. And honestly, that's what it is basically. Like I feel like I have the potential to do so much more. Um, that's why like that's something that I feel like my coach and I always talk about whenever I like go through an injury is like we know what you're capable of. This is not the first time you've gone through an injury. It's not the first time you've bounced back. You can bounce back a million times. And I think that's something that has definitely has shown me like through powerlifting, and I kind of been able to have that mentality with other stuff. So like if I don't get a good grade, for example, on a test, like, okay, well then I'll study 10 times harder for the next one. Um, and then also just like the strength mentally, physically, spiritually. So
Hmm.
kind of like both tie in a little bit, but I feel like
For
that's
sure.
definitely what powerlifting has done for me.
And then you basically mentioned it there, but where do you think you would be if you never found powerlifting? Or like, do you think you would still be in karate or, you know, kind of just going through life, living your nine to
I,
fives?
I don't think I'd be in karate still. But I honestly like when I found powerlifting, I felt like I belonged. Like I felt like I found what fits me as far as like strength training goes and the strength sport. So if I didn't know what powerlifting existed, I would definitely still be hitting the weights, I feel like.
Okay. And then obviously senior graduating in May, phenomenal. We asked Sequoia the same question, but how or what is some good advice to help, lifters going through college handle the workload of school, work, and making it through life and trying to be successful in powerlifting? What is some
Yeah,
advice?
I would think the first advice, and I think like I mentioned Jazz a lot again, but she's definitely always said give yourself some grace. Sometimes you can't really like control like a variable or something, and you can't like don't dwell too much on it. Like you give yourself like you forgive yourself for that, give yourself that grace, and then you move on from it, you learn from it. I think trying to establish a routine always helps if you can do that, but obviously with college, it might be hard to, depending on like your workload, how many classes you take. But I would say just like try to control as much as you can. Try to like, I know with like dining halls, if you're like worried about nutrition, use their like nutrition resources.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I would say like that's probably like the biggest thing is give yourself some grace, like be forgiving with what you can or can't do. Focus on like what your end goals are always if you need to. But those would be my advice.
It's very nice. And then what else do you do outside of powerlifting? Like what are your other hobbies? What do you enjoy to
Hmm.
kind of give you a break from the sport?
I like being outdoors. So when I can with my family or with my boyfriend, bike riding or like going to a park, hiking. I like reading. I also like playing video games. Maybe too much, but yeah.
Hmm. And then as you make this transition from school to, getting into the workspace, how do you feel like you're going to handle that transition of, okay, well, this is school, but now I got to actually, I'm getting paid, but I got to be there every day, can't really miss, and then handling that. And do you have any plans for, do you have it laid out of where you're going to be and whatnot?
Yeah, so very fortunate to already have like a job lined up after graduation. And I know it'll be like 8 to 5 as far as like the work hours go. But I think
Hmm.
initially, again, I'll take the same advice I give to like people who are in college is like give myself the grace, especially transitioning from being a student to now being like in the workforce and also trying to compete in powerlifting. And again, like control as much as I can. If I can establish a routine in the midst of the Atlanta traffic and be able to get to the gym at a good time or know what times to pull up to the gym, then I think that'd be
Hmm.
great. But for sure, just like let myself figure it out initially before being able to like dive into that, especially going to Raw Nationals.
Phenomenal, phenomenal. And then obviously we're down to our wrapping it up questions. Advice to a newer lifter. Let's think about when your brother started powerlifting. What was the advice you gave him to
Hmm.
be successful in the sport and to have longevity?
Yeah, honestly, I think I said this in the beginning, but when it like gets tough, I really want to protect my brother from being injured as much as possible, but it can't be helped sometimes. But when it
Mhm.
gets like really tough or when he's feeling like unmotivated, it's always just like remembering why you like started in the first place, what your initial aspirations were, like that, what gave you that excitement, like remember that, and that should be like what disciplines you enough to able to push through that. Again, like if Austin Perkins could come from like a hernia surgery, like why can't you come from a back strain? So that's my as far as like my mentality with advice for a new lifter. And also I think my other advice would be like not everybody's technique will work for you. And it'll be a long process of figuring out what works for you, but don't try to copy somebody else's. I know I had to learn that initially when I first started too, but it's something to also just remember.
Mhm. You kind of alluded to it there, but mistakes you made along the way. What is a big mistake that you'd like people to avoid that you have made?
Apart from that, definitely like worrying more about the numbers and pushing like for constant like PRs. I think when I first started, I should have given myself more time to like really work under like the bar and like the weight and figure out training, like my technique and stuff, and not worry so much about did I add 10 more pounds to the weight that I did last week? Did I hit like a rep PR from the reps that I did last week kind of thing? So I feel like that's something that I definitely shouldn't have done. Like I've fixed now, especially, but yeah, definitely a mistake I made when I first started.
And then lastly, a technique tip, again, to a newer lifter or to anybody, it could be squat, bench, or deadlift, just something that you've learned that really made something click in your head.
Mhm. Um, I think maybe for like squats, I'd say like I think the term is like stacking your rib cage almost. I have like a tendency to kind of like arch my back when I come out of the hole of a squat, and that's not always good. So definitely like trying to stack your ribs has helped me as far as like bracing goes too.
For sure. I feel that. I'm also working on that. But yeah, take a deep breath. You made it to the end. Congratulations. We've grilled you with enough questions.
Yay.
Is there any shout outs you want to give? You know, you already shouted out your parents, but any other people you want to shout out?
My boyfriend Jack, and then my brother. He's gonna be competing a couple weeks after me at the DNA meet, so looking forward to seeing what he can do there too.
And then now's your time to plug socials or where people can find you or anything.
Yeah, you can find me at _Kenya. That's my
Phenomenal.
Instagram handle.
Phenomenal. Well, you've been a phenomenal guest, really easy. Obviously, we went like an hour 15, but phenomenal podcast. Hope you all listened to the end. If you listen to the end, I don't know, say something in the comments. It'll be like 2 people,
DM
but
me. What were your
DM
thoughts?
her. Yeah. Give her the feedback, let her know, but peace.
Out.